Lurking in the shadows of this wire-wound world of technology, there is a mild-mannered group of IT superheroes. Their courage and a strong sense of right and wrong help these superheroes wield extraordinary powers that can transform our very existence. With great power comes great responsibility. That is why they defend our right to be empowered and enriched by technology. Every day they use their powers to provide us with technology choice, to make learning more personal, and to transform our daily experiences. As we pass them in the streets and hallways, they may appear ordinary, but they work tirelessly, performing their superhuman feats. They are champions of users everywhere. They are real superheroes. IT superheroes.
Good morning. How was day one of JNUC? Right. Some of the sessions got quite packed. I understand that there are a bunch of you that really wanted to get into the patch management session, but were unable to. So we are re-offering that because we don't think Aaron Miska is working hard enough at 4 o'clock today in Proscenium. So feel free to funnel into that just before tonight's party, so that'll be great fun. That's, of course, for everybody here. For those out on Livestream that are tuning in today that weren't here yesterday, my name's Dean Hager. I'm with Jamf. But if you tuned in to listen and hear about Jamf, you're really not going to hear a lot about us today, because we're not going to talk about Jamf. We're going to talk about you. We're going to talk about IT superheroes. And that's really what the video is for. And you'll recognize some of the speakers today because we actually did caricatures of them in that video. So the very first topic that we're going to have today is we're going to talk about an IT superhero in the area of user choice, which is driving Mac in business. And we get so inspired by your stories and listening to your stories and helping you tell your stories that this is really the day that I was excited for at JNUC. Last year, we had an individual come and tell the story of user choice, and it ended up becoming one of the most famous user choice stories for the Mac in the entire world. And because he started telling his story, a mild-mannered IT guy named Fletcher Previn came here to JNUC 2015, and he was describing how IBM had deployed 30,000 Macs in just 4 months. And then he said it. Every Mac we purchase at IBM saves and makes IBM money. And the whole world went crazy for about a month. It got more coverage than anything that we've ever done at Jamf, ever. And fortunately, the story didn't end there. There was a whole year of activity that occurred, and you get to hear about the results today. So what I would like to do to start today out is introduce the first of 4 IT superheroes you're going to meet. By day, he is the Vice President of Workplace as a Service for IBM, but by night, he is an IT superhero. So please help welcome to the stage Fletcher Previn.
Thanks. All right, thanks, Dean. Good morning. So, as Dean said, my official title at IBM is Vice President of Workplace as a Service. By the way, true story, recently when I called my dad to let him know I had been promoted to the rank of Vice President at IBM, he said, "Wow, I'm so proud of you. My son, the Vice President of IBM." And I said, "Well, I'm not the Vice President, I'm a Vice President." He goes, "Oh, well, how many Vice Presidents are there?" I said, I'm not totally sure. I think like 1,000. He goes, "Oh, okay." So my dad helps keep things in perspective. But by the way, there's not 1,000. Turns out there's like a couple hundred. But still. So I've actually spent most of my professional career in the Microsoft realm, which I'll go through here in a second. But I did get an early start on the Apple platform. That's me at age 10 with the thing that I loved most when I was 10 years old, which was my Apple computer. And then for a while, I thought I was going to go into a very different field, into entertainment. and I even worked at the Letterman show for a while, and then at the Conan O'Brien show. I think they fired me for having a too small shirt there. But then in the end, after college, I went to, my real passion was IT, and I ended up working at Walmart.com for a number of years, and being responsible for the Microsoft infrastructure, everything from Active Directory, SharePoint, Exchange, Windows imaging, and that's where I got my MCSE Microsoft certification and my Cisco CCNA, and all of that was before achieving my true lifelong ambition of middle management at IBM. So that's a story for another day. So Workplace as a Service within IBM. These are the areas that my team and I are responsible for within IBM. It's all the platforms. It's not just the Macs. It's the PCs, the Linux environment, the virtualized environments. The mobility program, which would include the corporate-owned mobile devices as well as the BYO program. The Mac at IBM program, obviously, which I'm going to talk about today. The internal help desk within IBM. The collaboration stack of things like instant messaging, social sharing, IBM Connections, all the stuff that falls into collaboration. The email environment, our intranet. We have a team that builds mobile apps for use inside of IBM. These are sort of the apps that all employees need, but maybe none of the business units would be incentivized to create. So things like expense reporting, looking up employee directory information, things like that. And then I do now have a visual design and user experience team that's part of our permanent team. And the reason for that is that's increasingly sort of our secret weapon inside of IBM. You know, when people talk about consumerization of IT, it has a lot to do with what things look like and how easy they are to use. And so anything that we build now, whether it's a web application, a mobile application, an email that's going to get sent out, a sign that we're going to hang on the elevator, if a lot of people are going to see it, we make sure that it goes through the visual design and user experience team to make sure it comes out looking like something that you would expect in your consumer life. Our team has a very simple purpose within IBM and mission, and that is to create a productive environment for our employees around the globe, enhance IBM's ability to attract and retain top talent. These are the engineers that could easily get jobs anywhere they want, Google, Facebook, Amazon, or otherwise. And having an employee choice program is really key to being able to attract the kind of talent that we want at the company. And then to be the sort of digital front end of the culture that we're trying to affect within IBM. And I'll talk more about that in a minute, but if you sort of think about, over time, people kind of try to steal your technology. That's sort of just what happens. But it's very difficult to steal someone's culture, right? That's really kind of the only unique thing that you have. Not easy to get the operational excellence of a GE, or how does Amazon go from selling books to being a cloud service provider? Because they have a good culture of engineering and solving problems. And so we spend a lot of time within IBM thinking about IT as an extension of the culture that we want to have, right? It's one of the few functions that touch all employees. And so if you think about the way you get good culture is by having engaged employees, the shortest distance to engaging employees is what's in their hand or what's on the desk. So the IT environment in IBM is not trivial. It's actually core to the company's strategy. And then last, but certainly not least, we have to keep IBM's data safe. And as much as we worry about our own data, we really worry about all of our customers' data. We are a fairly large organization of about 400,000 full-time regular employees, and at any given time, a contingent workforce of somewhere in the neighborhood of 130,000 contractors. So from an IT perspective, our team supports globally about 530,000 people every day. There is, by the way, only one IT department within IBM, so it's a global function. Extra challenging for us is a fair number of those people, about 40% of them, never come into a traditional IBM office, and that's either because they're co-located out with IBM's customers as part of our strategic outsourcing business, they're on the road selling, they're working in remote locations, whatever the case may be, but it does create some challenges for us. How do you upgrade people from Windows XP to Windows 7, for example, when they never come into the office? We have about 9,000 printers worldwide under management. Our team onboards about 65,000 new hires every year. Our internal help desk gets about 2.4 million calls per year. And we have 604,000 laptops under management. The breakdown of those laptops, today we have 442,000 Windows PCs, 90,000 Macs, and 72,000 Linux machines. So it's a very mixed environment. The Linux machines are primarily used by, there's a section of IBMers that do sensitive work for our customers, in some cases classified work supporting the US federal government. And historically, we had required those people to use secure Linux laptops instead of Windows PCs. And by the way, we provision about 170,000 laptops per year. Now, IBM no longer publicly reports where in the world we have our employees, and so I'm not able to share that with you. But nobody's told me that I can't tell you where the laptops are. So, I'm not saying that these are people. I'm not saying that these are people. There is a one laptop per person policy, so draw your own conclusions. And you can see, we've really got significant presence in North America, Europe, and India, and sort of secondarily Latin America, China, and Japan. But it's a global workforce is sort of the issue. So, I think for a lot of people, enterprise IT sort of used to look like this, right? It was all on-prem, a lot of Microsoft for most people. And we are starting to see a very different ecosystem evolve, in particular with cloud and SaaS. And so we spend time thinking about, well, what is our role as an IT organization in a cloud and SaaS world? And what we see sort of evolving is there's a core set of things that all employees need in order to be productive, right? Everybody needs a laptop, everybody needs identity. And then there's like this initial ring of core applications that are common to all employees. Everyone needs email, everybody needs the intranet, everybody needs file sharing. But then as you sort of move out this ring into these functional applications, it starts to get more and more specialized and applying from all employees to a specific set of people in particular job roles or functions. And there are some common configurations starting to emerge. A lot of people have ServiceNow, Box, Workday, as the case may be, and it gets more and more specialized as you move out. And the barrier to entry for people to go and adopt some of these cloud SaaS services is getting lower and lower. Doesn't mean enterprise IT is dead at all, because you actually have a much more complicated IT problem to solve. Someone has to come along and integrate all of these things with the security, the analytics, the reporting, and the compliance that you need to be able to operate an enterprise. And so that's sort of where we see our role of Workplace as a Service within IBM evolving. The other thing that we are seeing, or that we're really trying to implement within IBM, is, I think historically it's sort of in IBM's DNA that we think any kind of a program is going to be expensive, require a lot of people, take a long time to deploy. But what we're seeing is, if we take the time to do the engineering work properly, that design-infused projects don't require all of those people and time and money of the past to deploy out to people and help people adopt. If you make it simple and easy to use for people, they'll pull it from you. You don't have to push it on them. And we've had some really good success stories trying to be true to that, and Mac at IBM being one of them. And speaking of Mac at IBM, when we look at what does it take us sort of from an engineering perspective to get that going and compare that to a traditional environment, it's a pretty stark difference, right? So today, as I mentioned, we have about 90,000 Mac users. It grows at about 1,300 new Macs per week. Just 5% of our help desk is dedicated to Apple devices. And yet, we see 91% customer satisfaction for those Apple devices when they call the help desk. And there are only 5 engineers responsible for our entire Jamf engineering team. So, by the way, you want to talk about what does it take to have a great Mac program? It's having great people. And these are the real IT superheroes. They're here. They're all here today. There's going to be another session this afternoon here, so I would encourage people to come and listen to that team. And there will also be a Q&A section as well. That's at 1:30 today. So our mobility footprint within IBM, we're on track by the end of the year to have about 211,000 mobile devices under management, and we're seeing, approximately a 30% year-over-year increase in that space. We're about 66% iOS, 33% Android, and BlackBerry has really, tailed off. You can see here, kind of over time, the gray line is the BlackBerries, the dark blue is the Android, and the light blue is iOS. And we're down to, I think, like 0.4% or something on the BlackBerries. The challenge is that all the people that still have BlackBerries can fire me, so it's hard to force it from them. We do have a corporate managed program for mobile devices within IBM. We pay for 220,000 lines of service. There's an additional 61,000 IBMers that are then eligible to expense the work-related portions of their monthly bill. And it's really a group of carrier agreements in 53 countries, driven by one global RFP for mobility within IBM, and it's about $81 million of expense every year to my department. So, we had always had people in IBM that had been asking for Macs, and outside of a very small number of designers or people who build software for Mac, we did not allow people at IBM to have choice in their platform until last year. The reasons for that were, every time we had this discussion with finance, we got the Macs cost more to buy them, right? We got 604,000 laptops. Any number times 600,000 is a big number. We don't really know how to manage Macs in an enterprise. We're pretty comfortable with this Microsoft stack that we have. What will we do about all the applications that don't work on the Mac? We're going to have to refactor them all. We're going to have to retrain the help desk. That's going to take a lot of time and money. Incidentally, we're looking for ways to save money, not spend more money. And yep, we get it. The Macs are nice. We just can't afford it. And that's kind of where this conversation always died. We then had an opportunity to spend some time at Apple, and listening and learning from others is one of the things that we're really trying to embrace in IBM and say, there's people all over the world. Somebody has figured out a way to solve this problem. Who is the best at that? And go listen and learn from them and see what best practices we can bring back into IBM. And I should mention that this was completely separate from the IBM-Apple partnership. This was really about us making an IT strategic decision to say, we think the Mac is a great vehicle for reinforcing the kind of culture changes that we want to have within IBM. And so when we went out to Apple, we observed them supporting a large number of people and devices with an order of magnitude fewer people than you would see in a traditional PC environment. And so how are they doing that, and what can we learn from that? And what we saw was this kind of three-pronged strategy of give people the right devices, right? Don't chase the cheapest device that you can find, but give people equipment that's fit for purpose, in this case, Macs and iOS devices. Manage those assets in a modern way, right? I don't have a corporate image for my phone. Why do I need a corporate image for my laptop? Can I manage my laptop the way I manage a mobile device? Things like zero-touch cloud-based provisioning, user profiles, app stores. Can I take my laptop, throw it in the river, go to a retail store, buy a new one, log in with my IBM credentials, and have everything magically reappear on it? That's the modern management of that device. And then the third is drive self-sufficiency in the environment, right? If we do the first two things correctly, such that there are just fewer problems coming into the environment, we can then afford to staff a help desk that's totally focused on a great customer experience, right? And this model says, we don't really care if it's company-owned, personally owned, supported application, not supported application. If you call us for help, they're going to help you get productive again. And this model also says that even if the fastest way to close a ticket might be to reset a password, that they'll take 10 minutes and walk you through how to do it yourself so that if the problem happens again, you don't have to call back, or if the person sitting next to you has this issue, you can help each other out. Very different model than what we had been doing up until that point, where we were measuring things like number of tickets, speed to closure, which kind of drives the customer experience like, hi, how can I help you? We don't support that. Is there anything else I can help you with? I'm going to close the ticket. And then you get a report that says 99% of all calls met the SLA, but people in the company say that's the worst function in the business. Don't call them. So we said, we think this is something we can bring back to IBM and try to replicate. But this idea of not having a corporate image, basically for the last 15 years, or as long as I've been working, that's the way you deploy machines in an enterprise is You get a machine set up and configured exactly the way you need it to be for your enterprise, and then, if it's in a Windows environment, you sysprep it or slipstream it out and clone the hard drives and so on. In a traditional PC environment, when we buy Windows PCs, we buy them, we ship them somewhere. There's an entire team dedicated to creating and keeping current those Windows images. They then preload that software onto those laptops. We ship those laptops somewhere else to be warehoused and stored until employees need them, where they sit and depreciate. And then by the time we get it out to an employee, it's always out of date and needs updates. All of that is activity that we don't have to do in our Mac program because we're buying the exact same Macs that you would buy in a retail store, and we can just drop ship them to employees when they need them. So we said, these are the things that we will need to measure to validate what we think we are able to achieve in terms of needing fewer people, not requiring a lot of third-party software, all of the logistics efficiencies and labor that we don't need to do, we think, in the Mac space that we currently have to do in the Windows PC space. And that then became the basis of a business case that we brought forward that said, there'll be some new investment, it is a new program, and for us, that means we want to be sure that the goal here is not a cost takeout program. The goal here is to deliver an employee choice program and to at least aspire to have the greatest Mac program in the world. And that means we want to buy the best software in the world and hire the best people in the world. And then there would be this mix of hard and soft benefits. The hard benefits I kind of went through. The soft benefits are very important if you care about being able to attract and retain the best talent in the IT industry. And when we thought of this as a culture program and less as an IT program, that then motivated us to say, we really need to look at all of the touch points that an employee has to deal with in the course of working at IBM. Everything from new hire onboarding or getting a new laptop, setting that laptop up, being productive with that device while you work at IBM, and then eventually disposing of it and getting a new one. And when we broke it up that way, we sort of came away with 10 pillars of things that we needed to get after and improve to create a kind of end-to-end overhauled IT experience and really materially demonstrate to our population that we were thinking differently about the way we deliver IT services and really taking a user-centric approach. The other thing that was important for the team was to say, we all have to have kind of clarity of purpose. What does success look like? How will we know if we've achieved our goal? And we said, if the process for getting a new Mac at IBM was that you just get a shrink-wrapped Mac at your desk with a Post-it note on it with a URL to our intranet, and that was the sum total of instructions that you needed to get that machine up and running, that would be success. And that would be very different than what we had in the Windows PC space up until that time. You would think it would be a happy occasion when you get the email that says you're now due for a new laptop. That's not always how that news is received at IBM. And so we thought this is a good goal to strive for. And then if we can do that, because we're trying to kind of have this consumerized experience around it, we did some work with our procurement team to say, when a person chooses a Mac, can we send them an email when we ship the Mac to them, send them another email when it arrives, and then send them another email a few days later reminding them that we're here to help them get that Mac up and running. And so that's what we launched on June 1st of last year. We spent about 6 months doing the engineering work to be able to not have an image for the Mac and to do all of the things that you would traditionally do in the context of a corporate image at time of enrollment in Jamf. Right, so password policy, disk encryption, certificates, VPN client, productivity software, and so on. All of those things were happening at time of enrollment, and this worked, and we were thrilled, and we didn't have an image, but we got some feedback from people that said, I didn't know how long this was going to take, and reboot in the middle to turn on File Vault. And so the team did some work to further improve that experience, and delivered this as the next iteration of that, which had a progress bar, it cycled through the tabs, sort of displayed what was happening, and reminding people that Macs are now officially supported within IBM and where you can go to get support. Well, the team's been working over the past year to further refine that process and to enable some new functionality as well. So it integrated a asset management registration component, which previously was a sort of separate activity that happened post-enrollment. being able to identify IBMers that do certain kinds of work that require us to do other things, whether that's supporting a regulated industry, handling sensitive information, supporting the US federal government and otherwise. And so they have now released the new version of our enrollment app for Jamf. And what we have now is basically two paths. There's a standard setup, which is good enough for most people. And then there's a custom install, which allows you to check and uncheck kind of which packages and things that you want installed at the time of enrollment. So I do have a time-accelerated short video of what that actually looks like. And let me show that to you. So here we are turning on a Mac for the first time. Select your country, keyboard type, join a Wi-Fi network. It finds the IBM configuration because this is a DEP Mac. Authenticate with your IBM credentials. Enable location services. Create a local user account. MacBuddy continues as expected. Drops you out to the desktop, quickly loads up the enrollment application. It asks you to register this Mac and let us know if you're doing any kind of specialized work here. Do you handle any kind of government data, banking data, health data, or otherwise? Registers the Mac into our asset management system, which is needed then to drive the PKI that issues the certificates for Wi-Fi and VPN. And now it begins to go through the enrollment process. When it hits disk encryption, it's going to reboot because we want to make sure that we're not running with unencrypted disks until someone might reboot, which on a Mac could be quite a long time. Log back in, and it will resume the enrollment process. And you can see here it's going through all the things I described, the VPN profile, the Cisco VPN client, it's installing CrashPlan, Java, our Lotus Notes client, IBM SameTime for instant messaging, and our version of Firefox that we use within IBM, and then you're done. And so this Mac has now been provisioned to safely connect to IBM. It has everything that you need. You don't have to be at IBM to do this. This is available over the public internet. If this were not a DEP enrolled Mac, you'd have been able to do the exact same process by going to https://setupmymac.ibm.com. And by the way, if you had chosen the custom install, you would have seen this screen allowing you to check and uncheck which packages you want installed at time of enrollment. We do heavily rely on the self-service app as the one and only place where we make software available to our Mac users. That's really helped resolve a lot of the where do I find this software type of questions. And we're able to entitle people to different packages based on their LDAP groups. Some things that might be of interest to you. As I said, our Mac program is very much about driving culture change in IBM and being the kind of enterprise where people want to work. And so we take significant care to make sure that we're not imposing IT policies that kind of unravel the Mac experience. And to do that, every one of our Mac users is a local administrator. We don't bind the machines to Active Directory. These are local user accounts. We rely on the native security features of Mac OS. That's things like SIP, Gatekeeper, XProtect, and FileVault instead of third-party alternatives. We use MDM to provision machine-based certificates, so that means there are no passwords for things like VPN or Wi-Fi. And more recently, I mentioned in the beginning, we have 72,000 Linux users, a lot of whom are doing certain kinds of sensitive work. And the good news for those users is that the Mac has now been approved for even that type of work within IBM. So Mac is really an available choice for anybody at IBM at this point. So this is the system that we use when you're due for a new laptop within IBM. You get an email saying it's time, and click here and let us know what kind of a machine you'd like to have next. Our team doesn't own that system, but we did volunteer to help them improve that a little bit in terms of look and feel. And one of the things we put in there was this link to say, click here if the Mac is right for you, right? We don't want to be in the middle of deciding which laptop an employee should have. That's not a lot of value add for the employee. We want people to be able to make that choice for themselves. And we also made a decision that an application readiness assessment of our 3,000 applications that are our enterprise application portfolio in IBM would just be a waste of time. You know, and those kind of readiness assessments, in my view, are a great excuse to sort of do nothing. So if the outcome you're looking for is we have problems and can't move forward, do a big application readiness assessment. But rather than get completely drained by the people that were manufacturing excuses that we couldn't have a Mac program, we decided to just get velocity with the people that wanted Macs. And as we encountered applications that might be problematic, we would add them to this list. And so, you know, we got 3,000 applications within IBM, but most people are using, you know, a few dozen. And so I would also say there was some anxiety within IBM of people who wanted Mac but said, I can't risk taking a Mac and being stuck with it for 3 or 4 years if the thing that I use as my primary application 90% of the time doesn't work on a Mac. And so we put in a 60-day no penalty exchange policy that said, if you ask us for a Mac and it turns out your whole job is looking for fraud in the expense reporting system and you can't use the Mac, send it back to us, there's no charge to your department, and we'll get you a PC instead. That did a lot to sort of put people at ease, and people that wanted Macs were more inclined to choose one. And by the way, less than 1% of people have actually ever taken us up on this offer. Actually, a lot less than 1%. In terms of what do we do about the applications that don't work on the Mac, couple of vectors for that. You know, ideally, those tend to be the same things that make it difficult to work on a mobile device when you're traveling. And so at some point, we're going to have to address those applications anyway by way of building mobile apps or refactoring new interfaces as web pages, web apps. If it's something that hits a lot of employees, we could virtualize it on Citrix or otherwise. And then as a last resort, we could put a virtual machine on the endpoint. We don't like to do that because it makes the business case sort of challenging. You got to pay for the hypervisor and the host operating system. But it's another tool that's available to us. So we've now been doing this for about 1.5 years. We're 90,000 Macs in. As I said, our application portfolio is about 3,000 applications within IBM. To date, we have discovered 78 that are actually problematic, and of those, only 42 are actually just completely incompatible, right? The other one, or don't exist, right? Things like Visio and Project. It's a lot fewer applications than was asserted by some people when we got started. We're generally finding that most people are able to do their jobs just fine. This was our internal support portal before we launched the Mac at IBM program. And I think you can see even a person that was really trying to self-resolve a problem, if they had gone here and clicked on VPN, for example, they would have seen close to 100 text links and probably just given up and called us. And so we were really thinking of this as a sort of a total end-to-end culture program, and that meant we needed to get after things like this. And so the team did some fantastic work to redesign that portal, put a lot of time into making that simpler for people, responsive on mobile devices. Some things that we tried to take away from our time with Apple, right? Short 30-second videos seem to be a lot more effective than big, long technical documents. And then on the right-hand side here, you see this sort of concept of progressive disclosure, or showing you the minimum amount of information you need to complete the thing that you're trying to complete. And then also remembering your session state if you exit and come back later or come back in on a different device. We also made a decision that, in hindsight, I think was a wise one, which was rather than take the existing PC support desk and say, you guys now have to support Macs, we thought it would be critical for the success of this program to hire people who were as passionate about Apple devices as the people who were going to be using them. And so we set up a dedicated Apple help desk in Austin, Texas initially. Then we put another one in Slovakia, in Bratislava, and then eventually another one in Beijing. The other thing that has worked very well has been integrating the engineering team with the help desk, right? So the help desk, to some extent, feeds the backlog of the engineering team, and that means that you should not see the same problems in the environment over time, because as the help desk becomes the early warning radar system for problems in the environment, that then allows the engineering team that is regularly interlocked with the help desk to get after those problems. And that then means that we don't need this linear kind of a curve of saying, well, we know every 1,000 Macs drives this many support calls and therefore requires this many support people, because those problems are always being kind of worked out of the environment. And that's exactly what we see. So today, we have 217,000 macOS and macOS and iOS devices within IBM. Those are being totally supported worldwide by a staff of 50 people. We provision, as I said, on average about 1,300 new Macs per week. We continue to see very high CSAT on the Mac help desk. Incidentally, PC users drive exactly twice the number of support calls compared to our Mac users. And then if we're not able to resolve the issue on the phone and have to send somebody physically to your desk to fix the problem, that's a much more expensive transaction for us. And what we observe is 5% of the Mac callers ever require a person to come to their desk and fix the problem. 27% of the PC calls require someone to end up going to that person's location to fix the issue. Looked at another way, here's the number of Macs we have deployed each month within IBM. And so you can see we're here in October at 90,000. Incidentally, we project being easily over 100,000 Macs by the end of the year. Shown against the number of support tickets as a percentage of the Mac population at the midpoint of each month, you can see, right, this is sort of a good example of solving problems end to end. More Macs in the environment is not translating to a need to scale the help desk in a linear way, right? So that's a very impressive showing for the engineering team, the Macs, the way we're deploying them. And what are we doing with some of the operational savings that we're getting as a result? Reinvesting those into employee-facing things like creating our version of Genius Bars, or as we call them, Think Desks, in major IBM office locations so that people can come by and get ad hoc support with or without an appointment. Here's a rendering of the first one that we've just opened in Somers, New York. And then also being able to get after, you know, as I mentioned, sort of all of the pillars of things that you have to deal with as an employee at IBM. So the number one most common activity on our intranet is looking up other IBMers' information and contact information. It's called Blue Pages, and it gets well over 500,000 lookups per day. So this is what that used to look like before Mac at IBM. The team did a great job redesigning that for simplicity. We also built a native iOS app that's able to take advantage of some of the unique features of the hardware. So things like Touch ID for authentication, the camera to be able to update your profile picture, the microphone to be able to speak somebody's name if you don't know how to spell it, the GPS to get navigation instructions to IBM office locations. And that's actually one of the most popular mobile apps we have. We also got feedback from people that one of the main reasons that they VPN into the office is to do this on their laptop, look up employee information. And so we built a native Mac OS app that allows people to do that without having to VPN in. Also got some feedback from users that dialing into IBM conference calls could be cumbersome, especially if you're driving and having to deal with the moderator code or the participant code. And so the team built a great simple app that looks at the calendar, parses out meeting information, is sort of tuned to the way that IBM sends calendar invitations, and can dial you directly into conference calls right from the lock screen. The team also built a native iOS app for self-service to the help desk. So, you know, help desk ends up being a pretty good corpus of structured data, right? Like 90% of help calls are, you know, top 5 issues kind of things. And so if people want to call us, they definitely can easily do that. But if they want to try and self-resolve a problem for some of the more common issues, they now have a mobile app to be able to do that. This is a good example of sort of, you know, applications that might be problematic on mobile devices, Macs, Windows 10, etc. As a manager at IBM, you have to interact with a lot of legacy systems. A lot of those systems are older than I am. And so the team built a simple web front end to those things to say, you know, if really all you're doing is sort of getting notified of things and having to acknowledge or affirm or deny something, that you can do all of that activity from a single pane of glass. And so the same thing on the iOS version, whether it's access validation, performance management, expense approvals, and so on, you get notified that there are this many of those type of things that are awaiting your action, and then you can take action and resolve them directly from the device. If your whole job is sort of deep into one of these applications, then you obviously need to go into it. But for your average IBMer, this works fairly well. We are finding, so about 25% of IBM employees are engineers and about 75% are not. Within the non-engineering segment, standard users, when given a choice, we see about 90% of employees choosing the MacBook Pro 13-inch. Within the developer community and designer community, when given the choice between all three models, we see about 80% of them choosing the MacBook Pro 15-inch. One of the nice things about the data that we're able to get out of Jamf is to look at things like this and discover most people are not using all of the hard drive. Maybe we'd order machines with less storage. And then an interesting thing we've sort of observed is we don't see the same proliferation of docking stations, keyboards, monitors, mice in the Mac environment as we do in the PC environment. And people report to us that they're pretty satisfied with the resolution of the Retina display, with the fidelity of the trackpad and so on. And so we just sort of don't see that same kind of, even in environments where we're legally required to provide it, that people are just not connecting it that often. So we spend a lot of time on software currency within IBM. Well-run networks make the job of an attacker a lot more difficult. And so we put a lot of energy into making sure that we're doing everything we can to close the gap between identification of a known vulnerability and execution of that vulnerability, right? If the time to patch those things is months or years, that's sort of an inexcusable IT practice. And so this is something that we put a lot of energy into. And I think if we sort of compare the set of things that need to occur when a new version of Windows comes out, where in our case, our total cost to migrate from Windows XP to Windows 7, for example, it ended up being it would have just been cheaper to buy everybody new laptops. Well, we've now lived through several major operating system updates for Mac OS. And if you look at this, we got more people running the version of Mac OS that came out 28 days ago than the one that came out 2 years ago. I mean, and probably by the end of today, this will be 35%, right? I mean, it's just a very different behavior. And so related to that is patching, right? We spend a lot of time making sure that devices are patched and up to date within IBM. In a 12-month time period, we observed 135 major patches for Windows 7 Service Pack 1. In the same time period, we observed 31 on the Mac. And when we looked within those, you find 49 non-security related but important patches for Windows, 20 for Mac, 86 critical security patches for Windows, 11 for the Mac, which really means we have to go out and manage the Mac environment 104 fewer times per year. We see a sort of similar pattern in iOS versus Android. When we look at the operating system versions of the Android devices that are within IBM, fully 20% of them are running a version of Android that is over 5 years old. 40% are running on Android 5, 39% on Android 6, and just 1% on the current version of Android. Let's look at the same spread on the iOS space. So we got 0% on the version that came out 3 years ago, 2% on iOS 8, 33% on iOS 9, and 65% on the version that came out about 28 days ago. So, I think this speaks for itself. It's just a totally different behavior. The issue is on the upper bar in the Android space, the only way we could really update all those devices is to buy new devices, because we're sort of dependent on the carrier and the hardware manufacturer of those devices to issue the operating system updates, and they may or may not do that. In a lot of cases, they just want you to buy new devices. Similarly, when we look at the attack surface of both of those environments, if we were to go out on the dark web and buy some kind of remote jailbreak or a piece of malware that can survive a reboot of the device, in the Android space, you're going to pay somewhere between $10,000 and $100,000. In the iOS 10 space, you're going to pay a minimum of $1.5 million. And so, you just see sort of very different, disproportionate amount of malware in one platform versus the other. iOS is really kind of priced out of the market of organized crime and casual hackers, and just a much smaller attack surface. So let's take a look at what does it actually cost. We've spent a lot of time looking at this within IBM. Do we really know what it costs us to support a PC versus a Mac? And so let's look at this cost of per 100,000 machines over 4 years. What does it cost from a software perspective to run both of these platforms? So we need Windows Enterprise on the Windows side. Mac OS is free. We'd have Microsoft Premium support. On the Mac OS side, we'd have Apple Care OS support. On the PC side, we're going to need either on-prem Active Directory or Azure Active Directory Premium in the cloud. Going to need some sort of endpoint manager, which for most Windows shops is going to be Microsoft System Center Configuration Manager. On the Mac side, we're using Jamf Pro. On the PC side, we would also need to use Intune to do some of the cloud-based provisioning activities, because it's sort of not really well-defined where SCCM ends and Intune begins. And then we'd need either Windows Update servers on the PC side, or in our case, we put the files out on Akamai for Jamf. And so these two stacks per 100,000 machines over 4 years is $26.1 million more expensive on the Windows side. And by the way, we actually have a lot more software involved on our Windows stack than this, but I'm just including the ones that are common to most people. And this is a conservative number. This reflects the best pricing we've ever gotten from Microsoft. Now, if I layer in the staff required to manage both of these environments, we end up having $31.7 million more expensive on the Windows side. And if you then factor in the help desk numbers of people required to support PCs versus the Mac, it ends up being $57.3 million more expensive per 100,000 machines, or exactly 3 times the cost. And by the way, it's 3 times the cost all the way through these scenarios. If you remove staff and help desk, it's still 3 times the cost. So, and remember that we don't have 100,000 machines, we have 600,000 machines. So let's talk about the Macs cost more to purchase than the PCs. So when we buy a MacBook Pro 13-inch or an equivalently configured Lenovo T460, the Mac is $454 more expensive. But 4 years later, it's also worth $191 more, right? It depreciates very differently. And we have a used PC business and a leasing business, so we have really pretty high confidence in these numbers. And you can also just go out on eBay and sort of validate these. MacBook Air versus a Lenovo T460. MacBook Air is $190 more expensive, but it's also worth $138 more 4 years later. The MacBook Pro 13-inch is $117 more than a Lenovo X1 Yoga, but 4 years later, it's worth $157 more. So when we map out all of the sort of costs associated with managing those devices and running them into infrastructure, device management, the staff and labor, and the help desk, the Mac is the blue line and the PC is the gray line here. What we observe is a fairly significant savings across here. You can see really, I mean, device management, staff, labor, help desk, all of those are major savings. And by the way, right, I mean, I should just say, as I said in the beginning, I'm not the Mac guy at IBM, right? I'm responsible for all platforms and delivering the best experience possible on all of those. This is just what we observe as a result of implementing employee choice in a Mac program at IBM. So we talked about the software, the infrastructure, the labor, added in the hardware, new purchase price, and depreciation curve difference. If we combine all those things together into a total cost of ownership and compare like-for-like models of the 3 Macs that people would buy and the 3 PCs people would likely buy within IBM, let's look at what that looks like. So a MacBook Pro 13-inch versus a Lenovo T460 ends up being a net savings of $273 to IBM. A MacBook Air 13-inch versus a Lenovo T460 ends up being a net savings of $513 to IBM. A MacBook Pro 13-inch versus a Lenovo X1 Yoga ends up being a net savings of $543 to IBM. These are real quotes that we have received from IBM employees. The best experience I've ever had with IBM's IT department. I forward some of these to my boss. Renews my faith that IBM can reinvent itself. Never thought I'd see the day. Delight and astonishment. Like most people, I'll avoid calling the PC help desk. Well, let's just ignore that for now. Surprised and delighted, the setup was downright magical. Never again will I fear calling the IBM help desk. I've never experienced such a smooth, well thought out program. And you know, we take an IBM engagement survey, it's called, every year, and it measures things like, do you like working at IBM? Would you recommend working at IBM to a friend? Do you understand IBM's strategy? Are you engaged as an employee? And that tends to map pretty closely to the stock price, right? When the company's doing well, people feel pretty good about it. But in a period of time where the stock didn't always necessarily go up, we saw a 10-point year-over-year increase in employee engagement. And one of the #1 reasons people listed was better tools from IT, which we really think means the Employee Choice in Mac program. This is obviously very exciting. Yeah. For those of you who don't speak Japanese, what this says is that IBM Japan has made a decision that the Macs are now the standard choice and PCs require an exception. We surveyed IBMers recently on our intranet and asked them, how satisfied are you with your IBM-provided PC and your IBM-provided Mac? And not surprisingly, we saw that the Mac users are a lot more satisfied than the PC users. Last year in December, we asked IBMers, if given a choice, would you prefer that your next machine be a PC or a Mac? In December, the response we got was that 65% of all employees responded they would like their next machine to be a Mac. We asked them again that same question in May of 2016 this year, and 73% of all employees responded that they would like their next machine to be a Mac. There was some variation by geography and how old someone, or years of service in the company. But generally speaking, I mean, on a worldwide basis, 73%. Incidentally, we will be well over 100,000 Macs by the end of the year, making IBM the world's largest deployment of enterprise Macs. So let's review. What have we learned in the last year? We now have 90,000 Macs deployed. We'll be over 100,000 by the end of the year. PCs are 3 times the cost to manage and drive twice the number of support calls. Keeping those platforms current is a really compelling story in terms of what it takes to keep macOS and iOS current versus Android and Windows. Employee satisfaction is up. Our IT costs are down, allowing us to reinvest those savings into employees. And every model of Mac that we buy is a significant net savings to IBM versus a comparable Windows PC configured the same way. So some of the just top 10 lessons learned over the past year. I do think it's important that we start with why. Why are we doing this? This was not a cost takeout program, for example. This was an employee choice and culture program. If it had been cost takeout, it would have driven 1,000 different decisions. Hire the best people and buy the best tools is probably the best piece of advice I can get. I mean, as I said, you want to know the secret formula to a great Mac program, it's having great people. And so that led us to actively recruit and build the team that we have today and buy software like Jamf. Focus on the user experience, right? I mean, as I said, the goal is partially to give people Macs that are asking for Macs, but in a much bigger way, it's to create a great user experience and drive culture change. Not having a corporate image is a huge part of the experience, the business case, the engineering, the whole sort of beauty of how we're deploying these things and being able to scale it. Help desk, we measure all the things you would expect a help desk to measure, but first call resolution is a pretty good predictor of CSAT, or proxy for customer satisfaction. Protect the native Mac experience, right? So for us, that means not doing things that undo the greatness of a Mac, and local admin rights, file vault, xprotect, etc. Application compatibility assessments are, for the most part, in my view, a waste of time. Offering employee choice is critical if you care about attracting the right sort of top engineering talent into your company, right? I mean, it's a little bit like hiring somebody who spent 14 years learning to play the piano, and then they come in and say, hey, do you mind you playing the trumpet while you're here? You know, I do mind. I'm probably going to go somewhere else. And every Mac we buy is, in fact, continuing to make and save IBM money. So I think that's about the end of my career. So
Thanks a lot, Matt. It's me. Hold on 1 second. You want to talk superhero? Fletcher just presented 80 charts in about 50 minutes. That was amazing. And we have actually been in the same venue now. We are in Germany together. We are in the UK together. And we kind of make fun of each other as we get these Britney Spears headsets. And we feel like cheesy motivational speakers. So you've been dying to deliver a line ever since we... You haven't done it from stage yet, so go ahead with Jamf Nation.
you know what I see when I look out here at these faces? Winners.
All right. All right, the other IT superheroes that we're going to recognize here today, we're not going to hear full-out presentations. We're going to have just a little dialogue with them, and they're just inspirational stories. And this next one is really, it's in the area of education. And for those that were at JNUC last year, you'll remember that I had told you a little bit about my background, and that at the age of 16, my intent was that I was going to follow my dad into the trucking business. Noble profession, but it just wasn't for me, and I didn't realize it yet until an Apple IIe got wheeled into the classroom at the age of 16, and my life was changed forever. So the opportunity to put technology in front of students is something that I connect with at an incredibly deep level. To introduce our next IT superheroes, though, I want to bring somebody from Jamf up on stage to help me. So I would like to introduce you to our global evangelist for education, David Saltmarsh. David?
Let's go right on to there. Awesome. Welcome and thank you, everyone. I'd like to invite our two speakers on stage while I introduce them to kind of speed things along a little bit. The two people we have today come from different walks of life a little bit. We have Vicki Lyons from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Vicki is the Director of Technology and Media Services. She's also a distinguished educator for Apple. She's also a COSIN, which is the National Organization for Technology Leaders, as a Certified Educational Technology Leader. We also have Blair Anderson. He has come along as a classroom teacher, as you heard yesterday, from a music experience, as a teacher for years, as a music teacher, but now a technology director for a decade, from Shawnee Heights in Topeka, Kansas. We have I'll let you know, I'm worried about saying Jamf Pro, but we also have a customer of Shawnee Mission, and that was my number one thing to get through today. Rather than starting off right away and asking for details, because number one, I have to speed things along, I'm also overwhelmed by what I just saw from Fletcher. I'll just say that both of them come from, if you just scale what Fletcher showed down to about 10,000, that's what they're dealing with, all right? We're really here to talk about the stories that they have in their journey. And if there's one thing I've learned from getting to talk to a lot of people is we're at different stages of our journey with Apple and with Jamf, but we're also having multiple layers. So I'd like to get into the personal layer. For Blair, as a former teacher, how do you think that's influenced your leadership within the technology department?
I think teachers have one of the toughest jobs on a day in and day out. You're more worried about teaching what you're going to have to teach the kids every day, but you also are playing nurse and parent and grandparents, and there's so many things that pull at them throughout the day. So anything that we do with IT, it has to be easy for them to implement it into their classroom. I remember one of my first mistakes as an IT director was saying, we're going to require all of our kindergarten students to use complex passwords. And it took me sitting in a lab with 30 kindergartners at one of our elementary schools to realize that that was not the best decision, so we reversed that. So that's the one that always sticks with me, but anything you implement, you always have to go and test how it's going to impact the classroom or observe it. And if you've never been into a classroom or don't go in on a regular basis, especially from an IT perspective, it's very important to do that.
Perfect. And Vicki, welcome to Between Two Jamfs,
Yeah,
by the way. I've met you at one of the COSIN events. I mentioned you're a certified educational technology leader. How has your relationship with COSIN, and I've seen you at various roles, influenced and maybe brought you along professionally in your career?
Well, one of the things that we need to do always in leadership is to connect with people. And so besides this community of Jamf Nation, being a part of an organization like COSIN that allows us to connect at a leadership level is very important. COSIN is the Consortium for School Networking. It's a national organization that advocates for technology and education in many, many ways. One of the things that they've done very well is they have designed a framework for skills, an essential framework for skills for all of us to know what we're supposed to do with educational technology in schools. And so that, along with my experience here and my experience with the Apple Distinguished Education Program, give me people that I connect with so that I can continue my learning and do my job even better.
Terrific, thanks. As far as your journey with Jamf and Apple, I know, Blair, you're a little newer to it. You've recently made some changes, and you're new to Jamf. I'd love to hear, what was your motivation for that and your goals?
We were, when we implemented iPads about 5 years ago, we actually went with Jamf, and we decided at that time to go to a competitor. And but then this spring we gave our staff the chance to pick what laptop they want, just like IBM. And so they had the option of a PC or Mac, and so about 90% of them chose the Mac. And so we were looking at that piece of it.
Was everybody on Microsoft before that?
Everybody was on Microsoft before then. So so that was just 90% of our staff. We still have quite a bit of Microsoft, but Apple is coming up quick. But then we also wanted to, since the teachers had the iPads, and then they're going to have the Macs, we also wanted to help clean up the classroom. So we bought Apple TVs, the 4th generation. So with all of that, we looked at our then MDM, and determined that it was not going to be what we needed. So we went back to Jamf and have been very, very happy, great jump start. So and it's allowed us to get apps out to all devices.
I appreciate you, by the way, being delicate. You got to watch what you say. You don't want to take air out of the presentation. Right? When I was speaking with Blair earlier, I had asked him, why he was interested in Jamf, and the very first thing you had told me was what?
Jamf Nation. And it is a wonderful, I know everybody in this room uses it, but even when we were not using Jamf, we were using Jamf Nation website to get a lot of support and questions answered to how other people are doing. So it's a great resource to have.
Yeah, so thank you all for helping us earn your business.
And so, Vicki, I know you've been a long-time Jamf, long-time. There's new things that are coming out, and we've seen this growth from Apple, particularly in the last 6 months. I'm curious on what you're most excited about, maybe what you've implemented, and what you see as the advantage for students.
Okay, I'll tell you about that, but I do want to just mention this. In the early 2000s, a colleague of mine from Menominee went to Barstow Street, and we visited a couple of people who were putting together this product called Jamf, and we were very excited about it. And when I got to La Crosse, it was the time to really be able to use that and use that well. And so when we really looked at our one-to-one, and we look at all of the things we're trying to do with supporting our teachers and our students, we really believe that the management piece of Jamf lets us really manage what our users need, which is what we've been talking about, especially in that classroom. And we've started mostly with our special education area. And the reason for that is special education teachers are natural personalized learning teachers. That's what they do, that's how they're trained. And when we can give them tools that connect with them and allow them to personalize learning more efficiently through the things that Jamf has done with Apple School Manager and with Classroom and all of those things, it lets us support them even better. And the self-service side of what we use Jamf for, it is our portal. And our teachers know that that's where they go, and now our kids know that's where they go to get their resources, and it makes everything better.
Terrific. And Blair, any comments to the new Apple technology that's been released in the last 6 months?
We love it. We were able to be on a pilot with the new features this spring, and so implemented that into a classroom, and so we continued that on. We currently have one classroom at our middle school that's doing the shared iPad and then also the classroom app. And the teacher absolutely loves it. It allows her to have full control of that, and it takes us out of her classroom completely. She can reset, Apple IDs, managed Apple IDs that are owned by the district instead of having to deal with the personal Apple IDs that we've been dealing with for years. And then we continue to look at deploying out the classroom app, especially at our high school and middle school. We're just waiting for that integration between our SIS and Apple School Manager. But as soon as that hits, we're going to be pushing it out the next day.
Excellent. The other aspect, and we are talking about IT superheroes, your professionals. Blair, in your organization, I've heard you talk about your hiring practices of looking for coachable abilities in people when you first hire them, and then perhaps some of your IT are a little incognito or undercover IT. I'd love to hear about your process of looking at people from a coachable, and who exactly is managing the day-to-day operations with Jamf Pro?
In our district, when we hire staff for our department, we don't always look at the knowledge and expertise and degrees and certifications. We want somebody that's going to be able to work with our existing team, be coachable, want to learn, and just cares about education. We know that we can't always match what they would earn in the corporate world, but you have to bring them. You want those same people working for you in education. You just have to figure out other ways to do that. And so we provide a lot of things that maybe other companies cannot. But we also have a lot of superheroes, especially at Shawnee Heights. And I have two of them with me here today. Trevor Keeling, our network admin, and Chris Hathaway, who is helping us with Jamf, and a whole bunch of my other staff back at the office. And I know that they're watching live, so a shout out to them. And my department is what makes everything work for us in our district. They spend a lot of hours, day, night, and weekends making sure that they meet the expectations that are placed upon us. We also have principals working for us, librarians, instructional coaches, our wives or spouses, because as everybody knows in IT, it's a lot of long hours and days and emergencies, you get called in. So, and just everybody in this room, I think, is a hero.
Excellent. I'm going to stop and mention this now. I know we have a session later today that goes into greater detail of that. Can you just tell us when that is, the session?
We're doing a session at 2:45 today on this stage, empowering educators through collaboration. We're going to actually kind of dive into what we do at Shawnee Heights and how we include educators in our decision-making process and how we work with them and how we communicate with them of what's going on. So feel free to join, 2:45 in this room.
Excellent. I didn't want us to, because I know we're speeding things along. Now, Vicki, I met you several years ago, and I know how excited you were about to try to make some changes within your organization. I met some of your staff, and they were enthusiastic. What have you seen in your superheroes that has evolved over the last several years?
Well, when you come into an organization, there's a culture that's there, and Fletcher talked about that culture. And one of the very, very important things is to learn who the people are that you're working with. And what I had come into is a group of dedicated people that really wanted to make a difference in the lives of kids and in the lives of teachers. They just needed an opportunity to do that. And so 4 of them are here today, Brendan Conway, and Dan Lewandowski, and Kat Ellingson, and Joe Olinger. And this team, along with the others back at La Crosse, are the team that comes together and continually learns. So when we started our journey of one-to-one about 6 years ago, we sat, and we still do. We dream together, we vision together, we argue. We point out what's wrong, we point out what's right. But in the end, we all know that we're going to come to the same conclusion, and that is, what do our end users need? And when do they need it? And how are we going to let them do their jobs better? And so I'm just very privileged to be able to work alongside them and make their lives as easy as they can be with what I do.
Terrific. Now, getting to towards the end, I've done several presentations for different audience about trying to bridge IT, the systems and instructional, the example from COSN, your example coming from that. The dilemma is, when I do it, I get about a third who are like, we're doing it too. I'm sure about a third of you are already doing it. A third is really wanting to, if they could figure it out. And there might be a third, usually I get the arms crossed, or then the instructional that roll their eyes. I would love to know how you've gotten to that stage. If you have any advice, Blair, for people, recommendations or resources for someone who's trying to bring the groups together to get to the point that you are.
It's all about leadership, especially at the top in our district. And our board, they want us to work together and collaborate. And when we're making a technology purchase, it starts with curriculum. And curriculum is what drives all our technology decisions. And so it's not us just saying, hey, let's throw iPads out and here you go, enjoy them. It's all the pre-planning and making sure all of that is done before you even start to talk about technology. Because technology is just one tool in the tool belt when you're teaching students. So it shouldn't just be focused just on the tech piece. It has to be everything else. So we do a lot of pre-planning and a lot of discussion, and then just working together with the various groups involved in that process to make sure we have a vision and a timeline put together of how that's going to be deployed.
Excellent. Now, Vicki, we started off saying there's lots of layers to where people are in their journey. I've heard from you the multiple layers of equity in schools, and some that aren't doing the Apple might think that equity just starts with giving some kind of technology. Can you speak to how you see those other layers, out getting devices out into the community, has even helped you getting community support, particularly because most people will be curious on how it's helped you with gaining financial stability or sustainability?
Sure. One of the things that Fletcher said, everybody needs. And in our organization, everybody needs. That means equity for each and every child. So when we started discussing our one-to-one, one of the things that we really did is spent time talking about what do we mean by equity. Equity is not about a piece of technology. Equity is about having the powerful tools that you want to have in your hands so that when you are to a point where you want to do more, you have what you need to do that with. And if you have in your hands only something that can take you only this far, then that's all the farther you're going to go. And so we made the decision to go with the iPad and now the MacBook for a number of reasons, particularly because we knew that we wanted powerful tools that worked offline. We wanted to have the ability to have kids download information and take it with them so that, if you've got a 6th grader and they have a device that requires internet at home and they live out in the coulees of La Crosse, they're out in a region where they don't have internet, or they're in a home that doesn't provide that for some reason, they're not going to leave their home and go to the library at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, would any of us accept that as reality for us? We never would. So why would we do that for our children? And so we really believe that having those devices brought equity and allowed every child the opportunity to not only learn today, but to really learn for themselves and to take themselves further in their achievement. And that really has allowed us as a community to support this through sustainable budget numbers, okay? So our Board of Education and our superintendent and all of our departments in our school district, we basically voluntarily gave up 10% of our budgets to start this program. And that, along with community support, really has sustained us in La Crosse. It is the thing when parents come up to you and they say, thank you. Thank you for giving my child something that I could never give him or her. That's what makes this so powerful for all of us and why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Blair said a moment ago that it starts with leadership, and frankly, that's why the two of them are on stage right now. When I spoke with both of them, the reason why they inspired me so much is, one, there was no magical money fairy that came along and afforded all of this, right? You were deeply committed to making something happen for these kids. And Blair, when I talked to you about how you found the money to put technology in front of kids, you specifically said it's not about putting technology in front of kids, and this is your teacher background. It is about teacher effectiveness, and it is about student learning and getting everybody aligned on that. And then, Vicki, when I spoke with you, and I had never heard it stated so clearly before, that if we don't provide technology, then the wealthy children are going to be using awesome technology, and the underserved children are not going to be using any technology. And if we provide substandard technology to everybody, the wealthy kids are going to be using awesome technology, and the less fortunate children are going to be using substandard. So let's provide awesome technology to everybody. Back in the day, we didn't provide new textbooks to the wealthy kids and use textbooks to the underserved kids. So that notion of student equality is what got the budget for making this happen. And if you want to see what an aligned team around a purpose, I started this out by saying IT superheroes don't just do the what. They first focus on the why. We sent a camera crew out to La Crosse to just interview a few people about why this matters, and we didn't give them any leading questions. They just spoke, and you can see what an aligned team looks like just in this 1-minute video.
I think what's so neat about the La Crosse School District is we have such a diverse population here, and we celebrate that. We welcome that, and we want to try to make every kid successful.
I was so excited when I learned that we were going one-to-one. We made a difference for all kids, but the kids that we really made huge impact with are the kids that didn't have technology at home. I really saw that when we had even one lab of computers in our classroom, it was really making a difference. But even with 30 computers in the classroom, I couldn't make the same impact that I can when each student has an iPad that they can bring home. They have 24/7 learning.
It has taken away that feel of the haves and have-nots. It's given kids equal access. Kids equal access in the classroom and at home.
It really does equalize the playing field. And that is so important.
The iPads have just really opened doors to a new type of learning.
That instant information seeking that you can get. When the students want to know something, they immediately, I'll look it up.
The system we had in place prior to this was a very PC-oriented, old, lockdown system. And Vicki Lyons, our IT director, she's led the charge along with us, pushing and pushing and pushing, and it wasn't easy. What Vicki has done and others have done have really created openness and flexibility and willingness to change and give information rather than withhold it. And this is something that has been worthy of all the work and effort and resources that have been devoted to it.
He said it wasn't easy. It required incredible leadership to push and make an incredible difference in the lives of kids. And I just want to thank both of you for your leadership and coming here and sharing your stories. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Claire. Vicki, thank you. Thanks, Salty. We have one more story that we would like to share. Again, it's going to be a discussion. We talked about user choice driving Mac in business. We talked about personal learning driving Apple in education and student equity and understanding the whys. The last story of mobile transformation. I mentioned yesterday that there's a transformation story in healthcare that I want you to hear. This is actually, hearing your stories is probably the favorite part of my job. And in all honesty, if I'm going to stack up all the stories, I don't have a favorite customer. I don't. But this is one of my favorite stories for the year. I'm just overwhelmed by it. It started shortly after JNUC last year. I just made an announcement at an all-company meeting that I just had a feeling, something stirring in me. I saw some apps out there that I felt that iPads could change lives for patients in hospitals. And I just asked all Jamf personnel to scour the earth for a hospital that was deploying tablets or iPads to patients and what they would be doing with that. And it was a few months later that one of our support personnel, Nate Carlson, ran up to me and he said, I just had a support call from a Mac administrator, and he made mention that they're actually deploying tablets to patients. And I said, tell him I want to come on site, I want to talk to him right away. And I went back to my office and I got a call from Nate a little while later. And he said, two things. One, he's freaking out a little bit. And two, he has one question. Do you drink beer? And I said, tell him I will be there next week. And I traveled on site the following week. And the rest is history in terms of what they've done, and it's amazing. I would like to invite to the stage now from the University of California, San Diego Health Services, Mark Silvestrak and Eric Boyd. And Mark, I worked hard on getting your name right. Eric, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now, I told just the beginning of Jamf's journey working with you. Mark, can you just give everybody a little bit of summary for how it is that you're sitting here today on this journey of transforming the patient experience? Where did you start and how did you get to where we're at?
Sure. So I would say probably just over a year ago, we were presented with an opportunity to offer up tablets to our patients. What we're doing is we're giving them an application on a tablet that allows them access to their inpatient records. So this gives them access to their lab results, gives them access to the medication they're taking, who's taking care of them, what their schedule looks like, and that sort of thing. So it seems simple enough. Sure, give them a tablet. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not that simple. We certainly have HIPAA compliancy that we have to deal with. We have some other things from a privacy standpoint that we have to deal with. So what we started with was a less expensive device, and we would give this to the patients, and the process requires us to provision this tablet specifically to that patient. The patient gets the tablet, they use the tablet, and that's fine. Also, coming from the experience side, we wanted to make sure we weren't taking anything away from the patient. We wanted to give them a tablet and also give them access to some other apps and the camera and some other things on the tablet. So that's all well and good. Patient leaves, well, we now have to prepare this tablet for the next patient. And this required a phone call to the help desk notifying device support actually coming up and cleaning that device. It gets cleaned from a bacterial perspective by the nursing staff, but the device support team has to actually clean the device.
Because there can't be a bit of data that goes from one patient to the next patient.
We can't risk any leakage of data anywhere, obviously. So that's fine, and that's okay in a pilot case. You know, and you have a couple of patients, we would ask the patient if they wanted the tablet. We didn't require them to have a tablet, obviously, in the room. We would ask them, do you want a tablet? This is going to give you some access to your care team and a few other things. And so a lot of the patients took advantage of that. So that's okay, that works, but it wasn't something in the long run that was going to be sustainable. It wasn't something that we could really operationalize in a large-scale environment. So what we found ourselves doing was scratching our heads going, gosh, how do we manage this? Because this is going to be kind of tough. We are now looking at opening up a new facility, and I'll get to that in a second, where we're looking to put a tablet in every single room. And we want to give a patient access to not only their patient information, but a lot of other things, access to the TV, room controls, and that sort of thing. Well, this really created a big challenge for us. And that was, how do we turn these things around quickly? How do we clean these things? How do we give them still access to the applications we want to give them access to? How do we empower them to even download some apps they may want to? And so it was a big challenge for us. But we are getting ready to open up a new facility, so it's getting a bit exciting for us. And so we had some challenges, so I'll go into more of that in a minute.
Well, you can imagine, by the way, so first of all, if you have imagine how many hospital rooms a hospital has, and to have IT running around every single room setting these up, and you know, we typically deal with employees or even students. You know, students last the whole school year. What's the tenure of your typical user? Like, how often are you flipping over?
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. It varies. So the situation we piloted in is, again, not a case where we had a tablet necessarily in every room. We gave patients an option, but a turnaround, I mean, it can happen in a couple of days, but certainly every single day, you are gaining a new customer, right?
Right.
And when you go into a situation where you're leaving a tablet in a room, you literally have, in some cases, 15 minutes to turn that tablet around, right? Patient, that room gets cleaned, they can clean it in 15 minutes, and they're bringing a new patient in.
Yeah. So hire an employee and lose that same employee every single day.
Exactly
and flip
right.
around that piece of equipment
That's right.
for the next one.
And you
that
have no idea who that employee is going to be, what they're going to be like, what language they speak, or anything.
Could be 10 years old, could be
That's right.
70 years old, and
That's
that
right.
device needs to work for them. And now you're opening up a new hospital. I understand the doors look to be opening up when?
The doors will be opening up next month, actually. And I have to say, thank goodness, when we first started talking about this conference, a few months back, Dean had said, hey, come on out and speak at the conference. And we're like, okay, our hospital was supposed to open up yesterday. Back then, I'm thinking, that's going to be kind of tough. It's going to be weird. I'll be a little nervous up on stage, think about what's going on. So thank goodness, I guess, it's been delayed till next month.
We got a little slideshow of your, why don't you take that green button to advance and just tell us about this hospital.
All right, so Jacobs Medical Center is a 245-bed facility that's opening up, as I mentioned, next month. Each room in this hospital is a private room. Each room will have a 60-inch, I think roughly 60-inch flat screen TV. And we are placing a Apple TV behind every TV. And we'll be putting an iPad tablet in every single room. As you can see here, the rooms have floor-to-ceiling
Everybody
windows.
wants to like
Now
go
you wanna
fall
go to the
down and break
hospital,
their
right?
leg. Yeah.
Well, we're more than happy to welcome you. If you're in San Diego, I can recommend a good place to stay. So we are excited about this, right? And as mentioned earlier, this presented some unique challenges, obviously, for us. And a few of which were the rapid turnaround. We don't want to take anything away from the patient. Again, we were committed to putting a tablet in the room. When we were looking at the less expensive tablets, as we started moving forward with this project, we realized it just wasn't going to be doable for us. Yeah. And I had turned to Eric and I said, okay, Eric, I need you to do something for me. We got to figure out a way. And trust me, Eric was pushing and pushing and pushing me. And I'm not going to lie, he had to twist my arm quite a bit. But I said, okay, if you can prove to me that we can guarantee privacy, that we can wipe these things and get these things turned around in a matter of 15 minutes, and still give the patients, empower the patients with access to apps, whether it's via self-service or something else, I said, then let's do it. But show me that we can do this. So that was what I tasked Eric with. And now I'm going to let Eric explain how we achieved this.
And I should mention as well, without exhausting the IT staff, and as you've mentioned many times to me, without exhausting the healthcare staff, the nurses can't be taxed with doing this. They need to be providing care to the patient.
And you're absolutely right. One of the biggest concerns we had was with the 245-bed facility, we're anticipating roughly 30 to 40 beds being turned around in any given day. So that's 30 or 40 tablets are going to be reprovisioned every single day. And if we were to use the old model of having someone from device support come up and actually wipe that device, it literally would be an FTE.
Yeah.
So there's an ROI certainly that we can realize with this process, and that was a big concern of ours. So thanks to Eric.
Tell us about the process.
Well, thanks, Mark. Thank you, Dean. So the process is actually pretty amazing, right? Got this gorgeous hospital. We have 245 beds. And a tablet that's sitting in that room waiting for that patient to get admitted. Once that patient comes in, gets admitted in, working with nursing to get them set up, they turn on the tablet and it's sitting there at the welcome screen for them. They go through a couple of configuration steps, such as picking what language they want to use, and the device then utilizes Apple's device enrollment program. That connects it to the Jamf Pro servers that we have. And the Jamf Pro servers take over the configuration of the tablet. From there, we do things such as changing the home screen layout, pushing out the most critical apps first, changing the background and the lock screens backgrounds.
A feature that we added because you called us and told us to do it.
And then once the key apps are there, then the rest of the apps deploy. So the first app I want to keynote here is the bedside tablet. This requires that the nurse open up their patient record and pull up a QR code. We just scan that with the tablet, and now that tablet is provisioned to that patient. The patient sets up a PIN code separate from the tablet itself for their medical records. then this gives them the ability to see their medical records, see what they're in for, and they can tap on any of the pieces on the iPad to go directly to our health library and read more information and keep drilling down to learn more, however much they want. From here, we also have the ability to go in and see what's happening next on their schedule, so they know about when their next medications are going to be due, when their next labs are going to be due. They can actually see their lab results on the tablet. They can also see all sorts of other information as well. That was me doing my Dean Hagar impression from 2 weeks ago. So, of course, the other app is the room controls, right? We want the patient also to have control of the room. So they can control the lights, they can control the blinds, they can go in and adjust the temperature of the room within a reasonable amount, right? And then they can also go in and use that control tablet to control the TV and use it as a remote control, right?
Excellent acting. You should come to Jamf. I mean,
So we also, on the tablet, we want to make sure that there's plenty of apps for that patient, right? We want to make sure that there are social apps so they can stay in contact with friends and family, binge watch their favorite shows on their existing Hulu app accounts. And then the other key piece is when we have family and friends visiting the patient, maybe they're bringing small children with them. So we wanted to make sure that we had apps to help entertain the children because maybe a hospital visit isn't their trip to Disneyland that they wanted to go on, right? So we wanted to make sure that those children had something to be entertained by with as well. And since the patient app, it has its own PIN code, there's no risk of their patient data going to the children, right? But we want to make sure that and we've seen from our pilots that this has drastically increased the amount of time that families are able to stay with the patient and extends that stay and make that a much cleaner experience for the patients.
it's phenomenal. And then when, of course, we saw as the patient comes on, automatically loaded, everything's there. It's always the same for every single patient coming on. They do have the self-service there as well if you wanted to put other apps in there. And then they check out that day maybe, or later in the day, or what happens then?
Right, so once we have a discharge request through the EMR system, the tablet will then receive that request and be wiped automatically. So there's no need for an IT person at all to touch this device.
Phenomenal, just absolutely phenomenal. So think about this. You've got this unbelievably beautiful hospital. You've got an iPad, and you can imagine being a patient. You're kind of sore typically, all right? And so all the things you need to look for, and on one tablet you have all your medical information, you have all of your room controls, you have all of your entertainment, and you reach to the socially to the outside world. You have it connected to the TV in the room with the Apple TV. I have not found a single other hospital in the world that has taken this vision this far. Mark, I mean, did you model this off of like anybody that has this type of installation, or do you think this is paving a new way?
Well, we do think we're paving a new way here. We did not model this off of anyone else that we're aware of, at least, that's doing this. What makes us a bit unique, there are other hospitals that have tablets in rooms. We're familiar with those. There's a couple of things that we do that are unique. One is, I think we are the only ones that are offering up the iPad in every single room. We're certainly the only one that's also offering up an Apple TV in the room. And with that, we're offering up the room controls, which is something that is unique as well. Again, our goal is all about the experience, certainly for the patient. The patient's dealing with an awful lot as they're staying at our hospital, and we wanted to make it as a comfortable stay as possible for them, and we feel that we've achieved this, or we're going to achieve this. We'll report back next JNUC. But we do think that this is, we will successfully get to a great experience for the patients with our iPads and our Apple TV rollout.
Can you imagine a day in the future? We know that now there's millions of iPads out there in schools, but can you imagine the day in the future where this is just standard equipment in every hospital room, because it truly transforms the experience that a patient has? And I want to say something about this guy sitting to the far right here, Eric. You know, a year ago you weren't at JNUC, right? You were out working, doing something. First time I met you when we had our first beer together, you were explaining, hey, I'm the data security guy and the Mac guy, and the notion that we'd be sitting here a year later, because the vision started with you. You know, before...
He would not shut up.
It's true.
A hospital is launching around a vision that a guy just like all of you had a year ago. That is amazing and certainly worth celebration. Congratulations and thank you. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Eric, buddy. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll take that. Truly, truly superhero work. Just so you know, I mean, we have a lot of superheroes in the room. I think there are a couple of elements that makes an IT superhero. First, and you've heard it a few times today, understand the why, the special thing that you're trying to accomplish before jumping into the what. Clearly, Fletcher did not want to offer Macs. He wanted to change the way that people work. You know, we don't want to put education with Blair and Vicki in front of, or technology in front of kids. We want to change the way they learn, change the way teachers teach, and we want equity amongst students. And we don't want to throw a tablet into every patient room. We want to transform the experience that patients have when they need that transformation the most, when they're alone in a room, probably not feeling the best. That one is perhaps the one that I connect with personally the most because I have visited a hospital once or twice. A month ago, I actually was riding my bike and ended up flying over the handlebars and crashing across the trail and broke my collarbone, and I wasn't able to move right away, and my phone went bouncing down the trail as well. And not able to get up, I was about 10 miles out of town, out on my own. I was trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to get to the hospital? And it's a true story. All of a sudden it dawned on me that I was wearing this. And I brought it up to my mouth and I said, hey Siri, text Sam Johnson, who's actually sitting right down here, biking, hurt, come get me. And he was on his way. And if you're wondering why I called Sam Johnson, it's because he's the head of the Jamf support organization, and I needed response right away. So, thank you, Sam. And the hospital I was in did not have iPads, but boy, did that care team hear about it for me the entire time, because I knew what you guys were doing. We love to hear your stories. We want to tell your stories. And if you have any desire next year to tell your IT superhero story, you are more than welcome to come and tell it at JNUC. And for the first time ever, because we want you to have as much flexibility in your scheduling as possible, we're announcing at this JNUC when next JNUC is. We have the days booked. It's October 24th, 25th, and 26th. Next year, we're actually going to open up registrations in November so that you have flexibility in the budgets that you would want to use for it. We are not planning, there's no surprises from a pricing perspective, planning to raise prices or anything this year. We want to add as much flexibility as possible, but we are going to have to say goodbye to this incredible venue that we're in. I think everybody that's been here has realized that we have outgrown it. We will, at registration, when that opens, announce the venue we will be in, but we're finalizing the terms of that. But it will be a larger organization or a larger facility that we won't have to send you a few blocks away for any sessions, and a little bit more friendly for an organization this size. And when I say friendly, I don't mean from a staff perspective. I just mean a little bit larger and purpose-built. This facility has been fantastic. The 7 years so far of JNUC have been fantastic, and you have been wonderful here. So thank you, Jamf Nation. You're all IT superheroes to me, so have a great day. Thanks.